Hey folks, welcome to week 8 of DMD 320, application and mobile design. All right, it's a new week and it's a new project. We are starting fresh. You guys did a fabulous job on project 1. It's all finished up. It's in the can. It's been uploaded. You guys have been giving each other some good feedback through peer reviews. So now it's time to dust yourselves off and start something new. So let's get rolling and see what that's all about. All right, so week 8. We'll go to the week 8 overview. Okay, so the theme for Project 2 is simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. We're going to talk about minimalist and simplistic design, not only historically, but also as it specifically applies to web design, and even more specifically to application design. So we're going to be talking about that in a second with Project 2. There is some reading to do this week. There's actually a bunch of reading to do this week, both inside the project and independent of that under media. But just so you know, the media is this article here, Minimalistic Design with Large Impact, Functional Minimalism for Web Design. Now, this is a more general article about UX design and web design and how embracing minimalism is not only sort of a modernist point of view, but is also very sort of functional. So this is more of a broad overview. So be sure to read this. This will certainly come in handy. It's from Smashing Magazine. By the way, if you're not familiar with Smashing Magazine, it is a web design blog that posts some really great articles on a regular basis about different areas of web design. If you are interested in such things, which I imagine you are if you're taking this class, this is a good website to bookmark and check out on a regular basis. They always have some really good stuff going on. In fact, if we look at their homepage here, you can see that there's a bunch of new articles running from some really great web design experts. So good stuff. And one thing I found with Smashing Magazine is that try to read the super technical articles as you go through it, because it's kind of nice to be a little confused in what you're reading, and you'll learn stuff without even realizing it. What's great is that they tag all of the articles with different areas. So, of course, user experience, which is stuff that we're learning in school, as well as app design, which we're working on now. But it also gets into stuff like JavaScript, which you haven't learned yet. But hey, go check it out. It's fun stuff. All right, so back to our overview. Let's take a look at Project 2. This is the Project 2 handout. Of course, you can find it under Assignments too, but I want to look at the specific handout itself because there's a boatload of information in there. So look, more reading. So before you get going on the project, read this article. This is an excerpt from an article, right? It's a piece of an article. The article originally, it's called How Steve Jobs' Love of Simplicity Fueled a Design Revolution by Walter Isaacson. If you don't know the name Walter Isaacson, he is Steve Jobs' biographer. He wrote a official biography of Steve Jobs' life. He had access to Steve Jobs and followed him around for a number of years, pretty much leading right up to Steve Jobs' death. And then he published a biography about him that's actually a really interesting read if you haven't read it already. So this was just an article that he had written during his time with Jobs. And it really talks about how Steve Jobs became interested in simplistic design or minimalist design. Now, minimalist design did not start with Steve Jobs. He merely popularized it in the modern times and specifically for smartphones. And even prior to smartphones for basically Apple-derived web design, but really smartphones kind of went the way of simplicity, and not at the beginning of it. The first iPhone embraced skeuomorphism a lot, and we've talked about skeuomorphism in class. It's the visual representation of objects as they appear in real life in a digital setting. And so the first few models of the iPhone, really embraced skeuomorphism. And so Jobs' love of minimalist design really didn't come to bear on the iPhone until a few versions later during the whole skeuomorphic debate, which we've talked about in class before. So anyway, read this excerpt. It'll give you a little more background specifically on what we're doing. And the reason we're tapping into this article is because we are going to be using some Apple design resources to help sort of bolster our simplistic or our minimalist design as we go along. So anyway, read through this on your own. I'm not going to read it for you here. You can do it. And then let's get into the actual assignment. So like I said, the theme is minimalist design. It's sometimes referred to as simplistic design, but I am not a fan of that title because it makes it seem unintelligent or not well thought out, and that is not really the case. Minimalist design is a deconstruction of something down to its simple parts, and so I think that's a little more appropriate. And in fact, in other areas of design. Minimalist is really sort of the appropriate term. It's really only in web design it's called simplicity or simplistic design. So anyway, minimalist design, which is sometimes referred to as simple, like I said, clean or modern design, actually traces its roots back to the Bauhaus. Now, you remember the Bauhaus. We got introduced to Walter Gropius in our data visualization class, the founder of the Bauhaus, which was a German art and design school. It only lasted from 1919 to 1933, very short period of time. The school was shut down by Nazi Germany because they had disagreements with them. But let's just say that in the short period of time that the Bauhaus was in existence, it really had a large impact on simplistic or minimalist design and a lot of design styles going forward. Now, it's not just about the Bauhaus. The International Typographic style, otherwise known as the Swiss style, which we also studied in data visualization, is also at the foundation of minimalist design, and that existed between the 1920s and the 1950s, or I should say it was popularized between those time periods. It still exists today, but that's really where the birth of it happened. And so you can see there was certainly some overlap with the Bauhaus in terms of the years it was active. And then the famous architect Frank Lloyd Wright is also really responsible for the rise of minimalist design, and he was mostly active in the 1940s and 1950s, which again overlaps the Swiss style. So you can see that all three of these major design and art movements sort of dovetail into each other, right? So known for its clean lines and liberal use of negative space or blank space, simple sans serif typography, flat, bright colors, successful minimalist design can be found in both furniture, interior design, graphic design, and industrial design. So here's some examples. This here you've probably seen before. This is the Bauhaus School in Germany. This is an example of Swiss design, real simplistic typography, flat colors, and this is Frank Lloyd Wright's most famous piece of architecture, arguably his most famous piece of architecture. This is called Falling Water. At least this is his most famous residential piece of architecture. He's also responsible for a variety of beautiful buildings, including the Guggenheim Museum in New York City, which you should go visit someday because it's amazing. Okay, so that's sort of the historical basis of minimalist design. And we could spend a lot of time on that, but that's not really what this class is about. But I would certainly implore you to do some research into these things and notice that these are links to the Bauhaus information, International Typographic Style, and Frank Lloyd Wright, which will get you started on your research. But if you're interested in this stuff, definitely do more research. Okay, now moving on. In the late 20th century and into the 21st century, however, no other company really pursued, advocated for, and achieved successful minimalist design like Apple. Apple really sort of set the stage for minimalist design in a modern technological world, particularly in relation to its actual pieces of hardware, right? Its computers, its phones, everything that it did. This was really driven by Steve Jobs and his love of the aesthetic. In fact, there was a schism at Apple as they moved away from skeuomorphism, from more realistic depictions of things, into cleaner, more simple designs. Jobs advocating for the latter of the two, and other people at the company advocating for the former of the two. Well, if you've seen any Apple products lately, you know that Jobs' vision won out. So, of course, they were also in partnership with an advertising company, their own graphic designers, their industrial designers who worked for them, like Johnny Ives, for example. And, of course, the folks that build the websites within Apple for Apple. And so all of these people working in conjunction really took that minimalist design, sort of started by the Bauhaus, started by the Swiss style, embedded into Frank Lloyd Wright's work, and really brought it to the technological age, more so than really any other company, to the point where home computers, which for a very long time were kind of clunky-looking beige plastic boxes that took up a lot of space on your desk, all of a sudden changed overnight to really thin sheets of metal and glass by all manufacturers, not just Apple, simply on the motivation of what Apple was putting out there. And so if you look at a lot of Apple computers today, you can see a lot of those design choices being mimicked by other computer manufacturers, whether it be computers or smartphones or whatever. So of course, beyond the computers, smartphones, tablets, and watches, however, Jobs and Apple created an entirely new user experience and user interface language that has been widely adopted, studied, and implemented throughout the world Wide Web, mobile and app design. More specifically, mobile and app design exists because of Apple. Let's not skip over that, right? Let's think about that for a second. If it wasn't for Apple's development of the smartphone and the perfection of the smartphone, or at least the broadening appeal of their smartphone, then mobile and app design literally would not exist. At least it wouldn't exist the way it is now. Now, this is not to say that other companies may not have gotten there eventually, but really Apple led the way. So in short, Apple-inspired visual design for the web is what we all envision when we think of simple, clean, modern design. And in fact, I've taught a lot of design classes where students try to emulate what they see with Apple in their design. So it's not just about the products, it's about the interface design, the user experience, the visual representation of graphics and tools and functionality. All comes from a lot of what Apple was pushing for a very long time. So we are going to sort of swim in that pool for a while with this assignment. Okay, so let's look at the nuts and bolts of it, right? What are the directions? So you have been hired to create a clean, modern, informational, and e-commerce mobile app that utilizes minimalist design aesthetic made famous by Apple. That said, you are not to simply copy Apple's design style. We're not trying to come up with a user experience and a user interface design for this app that just looks like an Apple page, right? We're not doing that. You come up with your own visual style. So it's inspired by minimalism, more specifically, and inspired by Apple's sort of invention and widening popularity of app design, right? So even the minimalist style that is so common today has been inspired by Apple, but it shouldn't ape what Apple does, okay? So instead, you are encouraged to make your own unique design choices. I want to see a lot of you in here, right? Not just trying to copy what Apple does, while still operating within Apple's human interface guidelines. So you're probably wondering, what the heck are Apple's human interface guidelines? These are real things. So Apple, of course, because they are a landing platform, an operating system for mobile devices, the iPhone, the iPad, so on and so forth, they put forth for the developers, for their developing partners, these interface guidelines that you have to follow, or that you are encouraged to follow if you are creating apps for the Apple ecosystem, for the iOS system. So you're going to take some time and get to know the Apple Human Interface Guidelines for specifically iOS. Now, they have other operating systems, of course. There's macOS for the computer. There's watchOS for the watch. There's even iOS iPad for the iPad now, which is a new development. But we're going to take a look at these. So these different links will take you to these different human interface guidelines. We're going to go over these later on in the week together, but you can check out each of these links on your own. There's the do's and don'ts page, there's the Apple themes page, interface essentials, launching guidelines, navigation guidelines, and use of color. I want you to read through these on your own. I told you there's a lot of reading this week, so lots of research to do, okay? So get cooking with these on your own, and then we're going to go over them together a little later in the week. Okay, next, deliverables and project platform. So this entire project, just like our project one, you're going to complete it within Adobe XD in one big Adobe XD file, okay? Items below marked as deliverable will be included, and in the end, you're going to have this big interactive poster, as it were, inside Adobe XD. So same system we used for the first project. This one's just bigger and more detailed. So lots of work to do ahead of us. So you're going to make your design brief, just like we did in the first project, right? Same thing. And you're going to pick from one of these following customers. You have to pick from one of these guys. So choose one of the following clients to design your mobile app for. You have to include the client description and target audience information at the top of your poster in your design brief. So we have a little less choice this time around in terms of who our client is, okay? But there's a reason for that, because there's a lot more choices to make later on. So here's the first company. It's Howe Furniture. They're an online European furniture store who, with various designers, work to achieve consistency and minimal design and use an environmentally friendly materials and eco-friendly production processes. They use traditional handcrafted furniture, building techniques, and train their employees to follow exact guidelines to protect their process. Howe Furniture delivers to customers all over continental Europe and the United Kingdom, Canada, and even the United States. They will even help you place the furniture in your home for optimal functionality and comfort. They're very helpful people. So that's Howe Furniture. The next company that you could choose from, or the other company you could choose from, is Trundle. Trundle wants you to travel the way you like to travel. Trundle allows users to build their own all-inclusive excursion-focused vacation. So Howe is a furniture company. Trundle is a vacation company. The basic premise is that travelers can customize a trip to a main destination, choose excursion trips along the way, places to stay, make meal reservations, buy entertainment tickets, and more, all before leaving your home for the trip. All tickets, passes, coupons, and even methods of payments are stored in your Trundle app, with or without internet connection, ensuring your adventure is stress and worry-free. So you've got two choices, either a super customer service focused and friendly furniture company, or a super customer service and focused travel company. So basically they have a similar personality, but for very different purposes. Furniture versus travel. Now the target audience for each of these companies is 25 to 50-year-old with some disposable income. Neither of these places is cheap. To be spent on high-end furniture or annual vacations. Could be categorized as upper middle class professionals or tradespeople who likely own a home and have earned a degree or professional certification. If they have children, there would be 1 to 2 in the home. Use of the app by gender is likely to be 60% female and 40% male. These customers are likely to be on Instagram or Facebook, own at least one computer, laptop, or desktop, have multiple mobile devices, and at least one car. Okay, so that's your target audience. So choose one of those two companies, try to understand your target audience, and go from there. Now the rest of this gets into research and inspiration, and gets back into your mood board. We're going to create a mood board just like we did for Project 1. So you can read through this on your own. It's basically the same sort of directions, but there's some new stuff, right? The new thing you're going to do is you're going to go to Dribbble or Behance. You can click on both of these and go to Dribbble or Behance, and you're going to search for mobile app, and you're going to type in e-commerce app, and here you can explore a slew of wonderful mobile app designs from designers all over the world. This is where you're going to get some inspiration for the look and feel of other people's work. Again, you're not trying to mimic it or ape it, but it's a good place to get some inspiration and borrow some ideas, right? Okay, so all that's going to go into your mood board, and it's a similar mood board to what we did for the first project, where you're going to get some photography that you're going to use, examples of photography you're going to use, maybe not the whole batch of photography. Create yourself a color palette, deal with your typography, go through our selection of icons, remember those, pick out the ones that are going to work for you. So we'll get further into that as we go along, right? You can get your images from the usual places. So you can put that together, definitely work on your color palette and your fonts and your icons, etc., etc. Okay, so that's where we're going to stop now, is up through the design brief and the mood board, because those are our first deliverables. But you are obviously welcome to go ahead and keep reading through the rest of the assignment. We are designing more screens than we did for the first project. First project we designed 4 screens. For this project we're designing 10 screens, okay? So there's more to do. You can see an example of how it's going to lay out here for the wireframes. We're doing 10 screens, so it's definitely different. All right, so you can read through the rest of this on your own, but I just want to get you rolling on this because, like I say, there's a ton of reading and research to do this week, which will result in your first deliverable. At the end of this week, you have to have chosen your client, finish all your research, and fill out your design brief and get that uploaded in an Adobe XD file. And then, of course, get working on your mood board, right? That's all coming up soon. Be sure to check the deadlines and the due dates in assignments so you know exactly when everything is due. And we'll talk more about this stuff a little later in the week, all right? Get rolling, people. Time to get minimalist. I will talk to you soon.